picture the absolute pinnacle of romance, you know?
Yeah.
You have the venue draped in flowers. You've got the perfectly curated playlist echoing through the
Right,
space.
the dream scenario.
Exactly. And there's that singular cinematic moment when you look into your partner's eyes and say your vows in front of everyone you love. There is this magical, just almost overwhelming romantic high. You are floating.
Yeah, you cut the cake, you dance until your feet ache, right off into the sunset.
But then, the honeymoon inevitably ends. You wake up on like a random Tuesday and the romantic high just evaporates into the morning air, and you crash headfirst into what I can only describe as a cold, sober wall of post-wedding
It's
bureaucracy.
a harsh reality check.
It really is. Suddenly, you aren't this radiant newlywed floating on air anymore. You are a person standing under the harsh, humming fluorescent lights of a government office.
Holding a crumpled deli counter ticket.
Yes, waiting for your number to be called so you can literally legally prove to the state that you actually exist.
It's the ultimate reality check. Transitioning from poetry and promises straight into paperwork and processing fees. I think we collectively tend to think of a name change as just, swapping out a few letters on a social media profile.
Like an aesthetic update to your personal brand.
Right, exactly. But the reality of the mechanics underneath that simple swap is, well, it's profoundly more complex. Changing a name is a structural dismantling of your current legal identity.
Wow, dismantling.
Yeah, and a subsequent rebuilding of a new one that has to flawlessly interact with countless interconnected government systems and financial institutions and international databases.
Which is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are going to provide you, the listener, with a complete, comprehensive masterclass on the legal name change process.
And we're looking at the United States, Canada, and Europe.
Right, because this deep dive is designed specifically to save you from endless paperwork headaches, rejected applications, and completely wasted time. We are looking at a stack of material today detailing post-marriage legal processes.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. We are going to dig into the foundational legal philosophies that dictate how governments track us, and the bizarre and fascinating country-specific rules that trap people every day.
Which happens a lot more than you'd think.
Oh, I believe it. And we're also going to look at how couples are increasingly forced to leverage modern professional directories, specifically trying to use the Weddizer website for legal advice to find experts who can just untangle this massive jurisdictional mess for them.
Unpacking the underlying logic of these systems is crucial because governments, they don't view your identity as a fluid concept,
No, not at all.
To a government, your identity is a rigid data point. It's used to levy taxes, track criminal records, issue passports.
Yeah.
Altering that data point introduces friction into a system that was, quite frankly, designed to be immutable.
Oh, before we even get into the weeds of how to navigate that friction, I think we need to understand the underlying motivations. Like, why do people willingly subject themselves to this bureaucratic gauntlet?
That's a great question.
And maybe just as importantly, why do some people aggressively avoid doing it? When we look at the core motivations from the sources, the big ones usually cited are creating a unified family identity, honoring cultural or traditional practices, simplifying legal documentation, or just, a modern personal preference.
Yeah, the unified family identity concept makes intuitive sense to a lot of people. Having the same name on the mailbox, the same name when you travel together, there's a psychological weight to that shared banner.
Right.
Historically, the family unit was legally and socially represented by a single surname. For many couples today, regardless of gender dynamics, that tradition still holds immense emotional significance.
It's a public declaration of a private commitment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It communicates to the broader community like, we are a singular unit. Furthermore, for cultures where lineage and heritage are deeply tied to the family name, taking a spouse's name, or strategically combining names, it's a method of merging two distinct histories into a new legacy.
But okay, let's unpack this. I have to push back on one of those commonly cited motivations.
Okay, let's hear it.
The idea that changing your name actually simplifies legal documentation.
Right.
Does changing your name actually simplify anything in the legal realm? Because from where I sit, the very act of changing your foundational identity seems to create an absolute mountain of new legal documents. It feels like the exact opposite of simple. You are basically generating administrative chaos.
The contradiction you are pointing out is a massive paradox at the heart of the modern marriage process. You're right. The act of changing your name is the antithesis of simple.
So it is a nightmare.
Oh, it's a logistical nightmare that can take months, sometimes years, to fully resolve across all platforms. However, the simplification aspect refers exclusively to the long-term horizon,
Okay, how so?
particularly concerning children and international borders.
Walk me through that long-term horizon then. How does suffering through the DMBV now pay off a decade later?
Well, consider the friction points of navigating society as a family unit with disparate surnames. If you have children, having the same last name as those children can significantly streamline school registrations, medical consents in emergency rooms, and interactions with law enforcement.
Okay, I could say that.
The most acute example is international travel. Traveling across sovereign borders with a minor child who possesses a different last name than you do frequently triggers secondary screenings by border agents.
Because they're screening for child abduction or trafficking?
Precisely. Border control protocols are designed to look for discrepancies. And a parent and child with different surnames it's a primary discrepancy flag.
Wow.
You might find yourself required to carry original birth certificates, notarized letters of consent from the other parent, and marriage certificates every single time you take a family vacation.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. So by changing your name to create a unified family surname, you are essentially front-loading the bureaucratic friction. You endure the administrative chaos now to purchase frictionless movement through societal institutions for the next several decades.
So you're paying a heavy upfront tax in time and energy.
Exactly.
But we also need to emphasize a foundational truth for you listening right now. Changing your name is not mandatory.
Important point.
In most democratic countries, there is absolutely no legal obligation whatsoever to take your spouse's name or for them to take yours. You can keep your name, you can hyphenate, create a brand new portmanteau, or completely adopt your partner's name.
The choice is entirely yours.
But if you do choose to fundamentally alter your legal identity, you need an architectural blueprint to survive the process.
And if you happen to be navigating the system in the United States, that blueprint resembles a highly unforgiving, sequential domino effect.
A domino effect. That's a perfect way to put it.
Yet the U.S. bureaucratic infrastructure does not allow you to update your identity in parallel. You cannot simultaneously notify the passport agency, the driver's licensing authority, and your bank.
You can't just blast out an email to everyone.
No, not at all. It is a strict chronological chain reaction where each agency demands proof that you have successfully cleared the agency before them.
Okay, let's map out that chronological chain reaction because it sounds like one misstep sends you right back to the beginning.
It really does.
So the foundational document, the first domino, is the marriage certificate.
Right.
But we aren't just talking about a photocopy you made at the local library, right? The system demands certified copies from the county clerk. Why is the physical nature of this paper so critical? Like, why does the government reject a high-quality scan?
Well, the government rejects scams because a foundational document that grants a citizen the right to alter their legal identity is a prime target for forgery. A certified copy is a highly specialized artifact. It is issued directly by the Vital Records Office or the county clerk where the marriage license was filed. It typically features a raised, embossed seal that you can actually feel with your fingers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's often printed on specialized security paper with watermarks to prevent duplication. And it contains the original wet ink signature or stamp of the state registrar.
So it is essentially a piece of currency.
That is an excellent way to think about it. This physical piece of paper is the master key. Without the embossed seal, the federal government will not even begin the conversation with you.
And I imagine you need more than one.
Oh, absolutely. You require multiple copies, usually 3 or 4, because different bureaucratic fortresses will demand to see the original, and some may legally require keeping it for their archives.
Okay, so you have your stack of embossed currency from the county clerk. You are now permitted to approach the first major gatekeeper of the American sequence, the Social Security Administration.
Yes, the SSA.
You bring the certified marriage certificate, your current proof of identity, like a passport, and your existing Social Security number. Why does the SSA hold so much power in this sequence?
Because the Social Security number acts as the central architectural pillar of American civic life. The United States does not have a formalized national ID card in the way many European nations do.
Right, there's no U.S. identity card.
Exactly. So by default, the SSN has become the de facto national identifier. It is the thread connecting your tax records with the IRS, your credit history with Equifax and Experian, your employment eligibility via the I-9 form, and your future retirement benefits.
Everything touches it.
Everything. If the Social Security Administration does not recognize your new name, the federal apparatus functionally does not recognize your new name.
Think of your legal name as the foundational source code of an app. The SSA is the core operating system.
I like that analogy.
You literally cannot unlock the DMV level or push an update to third-party plugins like your bank until the core operating system accepts the new code. You have to physically go to the SSA, submit the paperwork, and wait for them to process the update into the federal database.
And the wait is the critical vulnerability in the timeline. Once you submit the forms to the SSA, it can take several days to over a week for their internal databases to propagate that name change across the broader federal network.
Okay.
Which brings us to the next sequential hurdle, updating your driver's license at the state level and your passport at the federal level.
And this is where the domino effect crushes people, isn't it? Let's say you update the SSA on a Monday, and you immediately drive to the Department of Motor Vehicles on a Tuesday.
Classic mistake.
You have your embossed marriage certificate in hand. What happens when you get to the DMV counter?
Well, the clerk at the DMV will input your new desired name and your Social Security number into their terminal. Their state-level computer system communicates via an automated query with the Federal Social Security Online Verification System, known as SSOLV.
Okay.
If the SSA has not yet finished processing your Monday application, the SSOLV system will return a mismatch error to the DMV. The DMV's computer will essentially tell the clerk, this new name does not match the master federal record associated with this Social Security number.
And the clerk just turns you away. It doesn't matter that you are holding this certified embossed marriage certificate right in front of him, but the computer says no.
The physical evidence is entirely superseded by the digital mismatch. The clerk has no authority to override a federal database discrepancy.
Wow.
You will be sent home to wait until the SSA system fully updates. And this exact scenario plays out thousands of times a day across the country because citizens assume government branches communicate seamlessly and instantly.
But they don't.
No, they operate in silos, connected only by slow, batch-processed data queries. You must act as the manual messenger, carrying proof from one silo to the next, waiting for the digital dust to settle at each step.
And surviving the DMV and the passport agency only unlocks the final, most exhausting phase.
The long tail.
The long tail of your identity. Banks, employers, payroll records, credit cards, insurance policies, utility bills, property records. The list is staggering.
The long tail is where financial and legal risks become really acute. Let us examine the mechanics of updating an employer and a bank. If you change your name with the SSA but delay telling your employer's Human Resources Department, what happens?
I'm guessing bad things.
Yes. Your employer will continue submitting payroll taxes to the IRS under your old name, but attached to a Social Security number that the federal government now associates with your new name. This creates a tax reporting discrepancy that can delay tax refunds or trigger automated audits.
It is a massive cascading failure just waiting to happen. And what about the banks? I imagine credit bureaus do not appreciate mismatched data either.
Credit bureaus operate on incredibly strict algorithmic matching. If your mortgage is under your old name, your primary checking account is under your new name, and your credit cards are a mix of both, the algorithms utilized by Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax struggle to compile a cohesive credit file.
Because they can't tell if you're the same person.
Right. This fragmentation can temporarily drop your credit score or result in outright denials for new lines of credit, because the system cannot mathematically verify that all these disparate financial artifacts belong to a single human entity.
And then you have property records. If you own a house before getting married, the deed is registered with the county under your original name.
And if you fail to update that municipal deed, which requires filing specific legal documents, often called a quitclaim deed or an affidavit of identity, selling that property or refinancing a decade later becomes an incredibly complex legal transaction.
I can only imagine.
The title company will halt the sale until you can produce an unbroken chain of legal evidence proving that the person currently attempting to sell the house is the exact same person who bought it 10 years prior, despite the different names on the documents.
An affidavit of identity, just for absolute clarity for you listening, is essentially a sworn, notarized statement made under penalty of perjury, where you are legally testifying like, I am who I say I am, and these two different names represent the exact same human being.
Yikes.
You have to hire a notary to watch you swear an oath just to fix a paperwork gap from a decade ago.
The sheer volume of this sequential, highly specific paperwork is terrifying. which is why many couples use the business section of the Weddizer platform to find lawyers who specialize in documentation.
Right, because doing all of that on your own is a full-time job. The U.S. system forces you to change your foundational legal identity to perfectly match your social identity across every single platform, or the whole architecture crashes. But does it have to be that rigid? Because if we look at Canadian law, we see a completely different legal philosophy, where who you are to the state and what people call you are allowed to be two completely different things. Canada operates on a fascinating dual system, essentially offering citizens a fork in the road.
Canada is a brilliant case study in how a bureaucratic infrastructure can accommodate both social convenience and rigid state security. The dual system provides option A, which is grounded in common law principles,
Okay.
and option B, which is a formal modification of the Provincial Vital Statistics Registry.
Let's break down option A first. This is what the legal system refers to as assuming a spouse's surname. This is the simpler route, and it does not require formal legal change. How does an assumption work in practice?
Under Canadian common law tradition, an individual generally possesses the legal right to use whatever name they choose in their daily life, provided that the use of that name is not intended to defraud or deceive anyone.
Right.
When you enter into marriage, assuming your spouse's surname is a socially and administratively recognized practice that falls perfectly within this common law framework.
So you just take the marriage certificate to the relevant agencies and tell them you are assuming the name.
Precisely. You take your provincial marriage certificate to the Ministry of Transportation to update your driver's license. You present it to Service Canada to update your social insurance number, which is the Canadian equivalent of the SSN, and you update your passport.
Okay.
You are functionally navigating society using a new name, but your foundational, historical legal identity remains completely untouched.
Meaning your birth certificate doesn't change.
Exactly. Your original birth certificate remains the same. You've simply appended a legally accepted alias to your public persona. The state acknowledges that your familial name is shifted, but the foundational anchor of your existence in the Vital Statistics Registry is unaltered.
That sounds incredibly pragmatic, but then we look at option B, the formal legal name change.
Yeah.
This is an official process initiated through provincial authorities like the Government of Ontario or Alberta. You aren't just assuming a name anymore, you are asking the government to permanently rewrite your foundational vital statistics record.
Correct.
And here is where it gets really interesting, because here is the detail that truly caught my attention. For a formal legal name change, several Canadian provinces require you to submit biometric fingerprints.
It does seem like an extreme escalation at first glance, I admit.
Right. I mean, we typically associate fingerprinting with criminal booking procedures or high-level security clearances.
Yeah.
You get married, you decide to formally take your partner's name, and suddenly you are down at the local police precinct rolling your fingers on an ink pad like a suspect. What is the mechanical logic behind the state demanding biometrics for a name change?
The logic is deeply rooted in identity security and fraud prevention. When you choose the formal legal name change, you are doing something much more radical than adopting a social alias. You're asking the state to sever the tie to your historical identity and issue a new foundational document.
Right.
You are effectively rewriting your legal history.
And a rewritten history is the holy grail for a fraudster.
Exactly. Consider the historical context here. Before the digitization of records, legally changing your name and moving to a new province was a highly effective methodology for making debts disappear, evading outstanding criminal warrants, or dodging civil litigation.
You could just vanish.
You could literally leave your past behind by adopting a state-sanctioned new identity. To prevent the provincial name change registries from becoming a laundering service for criminals, provinces introduced biometric friction.
So how does the biometric check actually work in the background?
When you submit your fingerprints as part of the formal name change application in a province like, say, Alberta or British Columbia, those biometrics are transmitted to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP.
Okay.
The RCMP runs those prints through the Canadian Police Information Center, or CPIC, which is their central national database.
Oh.
They are mathematically cross-referencing the physical ridges of your fingers against every known criminal file, outstanding warrant, and federal watch list. They are verifying with absolute biometric certainty that the physical human requesting this new identity is not attempting to evade law enforcement.
It is a massive security firewall. They aren't treating you like a criminal. They are guarding the mechanism of the formal name change because it is such a powerful legal tool.
Right. Furthermore, the variance in processing times across Canada highlights another structural reality: decentralization.
Unlike the U.S.
Yes. Unlike the U.S., where the Federal Social Security Administration acts as a unified central bottleneck, Canadian identity management is heavily decentralized to the provincial level. Updating a health card in Ontario involves entirely different bureaucratic machinery and processing queues than updating a health card in Nova Scotia.
So it could take way longer depending on where you live.
Exactly. A formal name change can take weeks to months depending on the specific administrative backlog of the province you reside in.
The contrast between the rigid American domino sequence and the Canadian dual system is stark. But that North American dynamic pales in comparison to the structural complexities we see when we cross the Atlantic.
Oh, absolutely.
If Canada is a fork in the road, Europe is a massive, overlapping patchwork quilt where centuries of distinct cultural norms, shifting borders, and ancient legal philosophies dictate modern bureaucratic realities.
European identity law is heavily divided by the philosophical split between common law traditions and civil law traditions. While there are baseline universal steps, like registering the marriage with local civil authorities and updating your national ID, the mechanics of how a name change is legally recognized vary wildly from border to border.
Let's examine the UK first, which operates on the common law tradition we just touched on with Canada's option A.
Right.
The process in the UK is incredibly streamlined. You present the marriage certificate to your bank or the passport office, and they simply update your records.
The UK system relies heavily on the concept of usage and reputation. In British common law, your legal name is fundamentally defined by whatever name you are generally known by in the community, provided there is no fraudulent intent.
Which is very different from America.
Yes, the marriage certificate acts as sufficient evidentiary proof of your intent to be known by a new surname. Institutions accept this proof without requiring a formal decree from a state registry. It is a highly pragmatic, decentralized approach to identity.
That pragmatic approach just completely vanishes the moment you cross the English Channel into mainland Europe, where civil law reigns supreme.
It does.
Let's look at Germany. You cannot just walk into a German bank with a marriage certificate and expect them to update your account based on your new reputation, can you?
Absolutely not. Germany operates on a strict civil law system that places paramount importance on centralized official state registries. Your identity is not defined by community usage, it is defined by what the state has recorded in its ledgers.
Right.
In Germany, to alter your name after marriage, you must make a formal legal declaration, known as a Namenserklärung at the Standesamt, which is the civil registry office.
So the state is deeply involved in the mechanics of the change.
Extremely involved. The state regulates the precise mathematical formulas of how surnames can be combined, which name comes first in a hyphenation, and whether certain titles can be retained. The Namenserklärung is a legally binding decree that forcefully updates your identity in the state's eyes. Only after securing that decree can you begin updating secondary institutions.
That rigid, state-controlled approach in Germany actually provides a perfect philosophical contrast to what we see in France. The rules in France surrounding legal name changes blew my mind.
They are fascinating.
Women in France legally retain their maiden names permanently. They are allowed to use a spouse's name socially, but the foundational legal name never changes. How did that system evolve?
The French system is anchored by an incredibly powerful piece of legislation dating back to 1794, passed during the height of the French Revolution.
Wait, why was the French Revolution concerned with how people spelled their last names?
Because the revolutionaries were attempting to dismantle the power of the aristocracy and the church and consolidate power within the secular state. Prior to the revolution, identity was fluid, often tied to noble titles or localized church baptismal records.
Oh, that makes sense.
The revolutionary government needed a standardized, immutable way to track citizens for taxation, property ownership, and military conscription. They passed a law decreeing that no citizen could ever bear any first name or surname other than the one explicitly written on their state-issued birth certificate.
They locked the foundational identity in a vault.
Exactly. The birth name became an immutable, lifelong legal identifier tied inextricably to the citizen. Therefore, the very concept of a legal name change due to marriage simply does not exist in French law the way it does in American or British law. The state views your identity as fixed at the moment of birth.
But people in France do use their spouse's names, right?
Yes, through a mechanism called a nom d'usage, or a usage name. French law allows a citizen to utilize their spouse's surname socially, professionally, and even on certain secondary government documents.
Okay, so there's a workaround.
But on the most fundamental legal level, like voter registration registries, property deeds, vital records, they remain perpetually tethered to their birth name. It creates a fascinating bifurcation. You have a social identity for your family and community, and a permanently fixed legal identity for the state apparatus.
And as we move further south into Italy and Spain, we encounter systems where name changes are simply uncommon due to deeply ingrained cultural mechanisms for tracking lineage.
Yes. In Spain, the cultural and legal norm revolves around the dual surname system. A person traditionally inherits two surnames, the first surname of their father, followed by the first surname of their mother.
Okay.
When a woman marries, she does not legally or socially drop her surnames to adopt her husband's. The familial structure and lineage are tracked through the passage of these dual surnames to the next generation. Marriage does not erase or overwrite your familial lineage. Therefore, the bureaucratic machinery of a name change is largely unnecessary and culturally alien.
When you look at the sheer diversity of these European systems, the pragmatic common law of the UK, the rigid civil registry of Germany, the revolutionary immutability of France, and the lineage tracking of Spain, you immediately recognize a massive structural problem.
The cross-border reality.
Yes. What happens to the millions of people living in cross-border realities? Consider an American citizen marrying a German citizen while both are living and working as expats in Paris.
You have just described a jurisdictional nightmare of the highest order. Which country's legal philosophy takes precedence? Does the American's identity follow the U.S. domino effect? Does the German's identity require a Namenssatzklärung filed internationally? Or does French law immediately classify any changes as merely a non-dusage because the marriage occurred on French soil?
It is an impossible puzzle for a layperson to solve.
It really is. It requires navigating international private law, understanding conflicting civil registries, and determining the hierarchy of jurisdiction. Attempting to DIY a cross-border name change is not just inefficient, it is actively dangerous to your legal status.
This jurisdictional chaos is precisely why couples in these scenarios are mathematically forced to rely on specialized legal counsel, and we are seeing a massive shift in how people source that counsel.
Absolutely.
They aren't opening a phone book or randomly searching Google. They are utilizing curated professional networks, specifically trying to use the Weddizer website for legal advice to locate verified international identity specialists.
Which is incredibly smart.
We will dive deep into exactly how those Weddizer experts untangle these knots shortly. But first, we need to address the fallout of making a mistake.
Regardless of whether you are navigating the strict U.S. system, the dual Canadian system, or the fractured European landscape, there are universal bureaucratic nightmares that trap people across the globe.
Yeah, there's a universal toolbox of documents you always need. Certified marriage certificates, current government IDs, passports, physical proof of address like utility bills, and specialized application forms.
But possessing the tools does not guarantee you know how to build the house.
Exactly. There are 4 common challenges that consistently cause the system to break down. Let's examine the first one. Document mismatch.
This is a big one.
The rule is that all documents must match your new name exactly. But how sensitive are these systems? Like, if my legal name is hyphenated as Smith-Jones, but the bank types Smith-Jones with a space instead of a hyphen, does the architecture really collapse over punctuation mark?
It absolutely collapses.
Yeah.
Because human interpretation has been entirely removed from the verification process. We no longer live in an era where a friendly local bank teller looks at your face, looks at your slightly mismatched ID, and pushes the transaction through based on personal recognition.
Those days are long gone.
We live in an era of automated algorithmic verification.
Explain the mechanics of that algorithmic verification. Where does the hyphen actually cause the crash?
Consider the Automated Clearinghouse, or ACH network, which processes electronic funds transfers across the global banking system. When an employer attempts to direct deposit your payroll, the ACH system transmits a data packet containing your account number, routing number, and the precise alphanumeric string of your name.
Right.
The receiving bank server compares the incoming text string to the text string on file for that account. If the incoming string is Smith-Jones and the internal string is Smith-Jones, the algorithm detects a mismatch.
The computer doesn't understand context. It just sees that string A does not equal string B.
Exactly. The algorithm assumes the funds are being directed to a fraudulent or incorrect entity and automatically rejects the wire transfer. Your payroll bounces back to your employer, your mortgage payment fails to clear, and your financial life grinds to a halt, all because a clerk missed a single hyphen during data entry.
Wow.
You must treat the spelling and punctuation of your legal identity with the precision of a software engineer writing code.
That level of precision is stressful, but it pales in comparison to the second major challenge: delays in processing, specifically regarding international travel.
Oh, this is one that really ruins lives.
Let's build out a terrifying, high-stakes hypothetical to illustrate why you never mess with your name right before a flight.
Okay, set the scene.
Imagine you and your partner have spent 2 years saving up for a dream honeymoon in Bali. You get married on a Saturday. On Monday, acting highly responsible and organized, you mail your valid passport off to the federal agency to be updated with your new married name.
You're attempting to follow the checklist, but you are failing to account for the physical reality of administrative backlogs.
Right, so you mail the passport. A few days later, you go to the DMV and successfully update your driver's license. Your flight to Bali leaves on a Friday. The airline tickets for this honeymoon were booked 6 months ago under your maiden name.
And this is where the trap snaps shut. Because of seasonal backlogs at the passport agency, your newly updated passport has not arrived in the mail. It is stuck in a processing facility.
So you arrive at the international terminal, you walk up to the check-in counter, you present the airline agent with a digital ticket purchased under name A, you present a newly minted driver's license bearing name B, and because you don't have your new passport, you are relying on, what, maybe a photocopy of your old passport?
The airline agent looks at this chaotic pile of mismatched, fundamentally incompatible identities. They are not acting out of malice. They are bound by international aviation security laws.
Right.
Following the expansion of global anti-terrorism protocols, the Transportation Security Administration and international equivalents mandate a policy known as secure flight. The secure flight program requires that the passenger name provided during booking, mathematically, matches the name on the government-issued travel document presented at the airport.
So what happens when the agent sees the ticket in your maiden name and the ID in your married name without a valid passport bridging the gap?
A mismatch means you are grounded. The airline's boarding software will physically not allow the agent to print a boarding pass.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. The agent cannot legally board you onto that international flight. There is no manager they can call. There is no supervisor who can override the secure flight mandate. Your luggage will be pulled from the tarmac. You are going to spend your honeymoon sitting in Terminal 4 weeping over an invalidated $1,500 ticket entirely because you initiated a bureaucratic process you could not complete in time.
So the absolute unbreakable rule of name changes is this: if you are traveling internationally within a few months of the wedding, do not touch your identity documents. Travel on your maiden name, ensure the tickets match that maiden name perfectly, and deal with the bureaucracy when you return.
It is the only way to mitigate the risk of processing delays, which leads directly to the third challenge, missing updates. The name change process is a war of attrition. People successfully update the major dominoes, the SSA, the DMV, the passport, and then they experience change fatigue. They stop updating the secondary system.
They forget to update their medical insurance portal or their voter registration or their alumni association.
And that fatigue triggers a cascade of verification failures later on.
Give me an example.
Well, if you require emergency surgery, and the hospital admits you under your new legal name, but your health insurance provider still has your old name on file, the hospital's billing system will clash with the insurer's database.
Oh, no.
The claim will be denied automatically due to an identity mismatch, leaving you liable for massive medical bills while you frantically try to prove to an insurance adjuster that you are the policyholder.
That's terrifying.
You cannot rely on human memory to prevent these gaps. You must utilize a systematic, exhaustive checklist, treating every single subscription, utility, and account as a critical update.
The fourth and final challenge is the legal confusion across borders, which brings us back to the jurisdictional nightmare of the expats in Paris. When you are dealing with conflicting common law and civil law systems, missing apostilles, and flight grounding mismatches, DIY is no longer a badge of honor. It is a massive, uncalculated risk. This brings us to the structural solution we teased earlier, the cheat code to navigating this global labyrinth.
The realization that attempting to brute force your way through international identity law alone is highly inefficient.
We have mentioned the Weddizer directory a few times, but I want to unpack exactly how specialized legal professionals sourced through platforms like Weddizer fundamentally alter the landscape for a couple. Think of your identity as a complex software program communicating with a dozen different servers. These lawyers are not just data entry clerks, they are highly specialized software debuggers for your legal identity.
That is an incredibly accurate framing. Legal representation in this context is entirely about risk mitigation and strategic execution. When a specialized firm takes over your name change process, they are actively preventing the friction we have discussed today. They audit the applications before submission, ensuring that complex hyphenations or dual surname combinations comply with the specific formatting rules of the target jurisdiction. They prevent the agonizing rejections that send you to the back of a 3-month processing queue.
But the real magic, the absolute necessity of these firms becomes apparent when dealing with international complexities. Let's talk about the mechanics of cross-border documentation. If an American marries in Italy, they can't just mail an Italian marriage certificate to the state of Ohio and expect it to be recognized.
Ohio will reject it immediately because they cannot verify its authenticity or read its contents. This is where the specialized counsel steps in to secure apostille stamps and sworn translations.
For absolute clarity, what exactly is an apostille stamp?
An apostille is a highly specialized international notary seal established by the Hague Convention. It is a formalized certificate issued by the government of the country where the document originated, in this case Italy, that legally authenticates the origin of a public document.
Okay, so it proves it's real.
Yes. When Italy attaches an apostille to the marriage certificate, it forces the state of Ohio, under international treaty, to legally recognize that document as a legitimate, state-sanctioned artifact, bypassing the need for further diplomatic authentication.
And what about the translation? I assume you can't just run the Italian certificate through Google Translate and print it out.
Not unless you want your application immediately discarded. Governments require a sworn, certified translation. This is a translation performed by a linguist who has been formally approved by the local court system. The translator attaches a legally binding affidavit swearing under oath that the translation is a mathematically precise reflection of the original document. Specialized legal firms maintain networks of these sworn translators and apostille agents to seamlessly process these international conversions.
Securing apostilles, coordinating sworn translations, navigating French non-dusage laws, none of this is intuitive. So why are couples increasingly turning to the Weddizer platform to find these specific debuggers? Why not simply open up Google, type in lawyer, and hire the first firm that pops up in the search results?
Well, relying on a general search engine for a highly specialized legal task is inviting chaos into your structural planning. If you search for a lawyer generally, the algorithm returns personal injury attorneys, corporate litigators, and real estate specialists. You are confronted with a wall of noise.
And you don't want a lawyer who spends 90% of their time arguing over fender benders trying to decipher the French civil registry for the first time while billing you by the hour for their education.
Precisely. The value of a centralized, curated platform, like the Weddizer Business Directory, is that it actively filters out the noise. It provides a specialized marketplace of professionals who have explicit, proven experience in post-nuptial legal administration. These are experts who have navigated the U.S. domino effect hundreds of times, who understand the biometric requirements of Canadian provinces, and who know exactly how to file a German Namenserklärung for an American expat. The platform connects you with practitioners who possess the specific jurisdictional code required to update your identity architecture flawlessly.
Trying to navigate an international name change without a verified expert from a platform like Weddizer is like trying to rewrite the source code of your bank's security system based on a gut feeling.
Exactly.
You might get lucky, but you are significantly more likely to crash the entire system and lock yourself out of your own life. Investing in verified expert assistance is an investment in long-term structural stability.
The consequences of a legal error in your identity documentation are insidious. They can lie dormant in the architecture for years, only surfacing at the most critical and inconvenient times, such as attempting to secure a mortgage, applying for a long-term residency visa, or claiming an international inheritance.
And professional counsel eliminates those dormant errors before they can metastasize.
They absolutely do.
Let's zoom out and review the massive structural journey we have just undertaken. We began by dismantling the illusion that changing a name is a simple aesthetic update, revealing it to be a profound reconstruction of your legal relationship with the state.
Right.
We mapped out the unforgiving American labyrinth, where the Social Security Administration acts as the foundational operating system, creating a rigid domino effect that demands sequential perfection.
We then contrasted that rigidity with the Canadian common law system, examining the philosophical difference between assuming a social alias and formally rewriting your vital statistics.
Okay.
A process so sensitive it requires biometric verification via the RCMP to prevent fraudulent identity laundering.
We crossed the Atlantic to explore the deep philosophical divides of Europe. We saw the pragmatic usage-based system of the UK, the rigid state registries of Germany, the revolutionary immutable birth names of France, and the dual surname lineage tracking of Spain.
And we explored the terrifying algorithmic reality of bank mismatches and the paralyzing aviation security laws that will ground your honeymoon flights if your paperwork is delayed.
And we concluded by analyzing the structural necessity of expert intervention, detailing how specialized professionals sourced through curated networks like the Weddizer platform utilize tools like apostils and sworn translations to debug the jurisdictional chaos and safeguard your identity across borders.
It's a lot to process.
It is. To you, the listener, the tactical takeaways are absolute. If you are preparing to navigate the system, you must build an exhaustive checklist. You must secure more embossed certified copies than you logically think you will need.
That's today.
You must treat every hyphen and keystroke with the precision of a software engineer. Do not alter your identity prior to international travel. And above all, recognize when the jurisdictional complexity exceeds your capacity, and try to use the Weddizer website for legal advice to secure the exact legal architect you need.
As we conclude this deep dive, it is worth pausing to consider the sheer physical fragility of the systems we have just described.
How so?
Well, throughout this extensive discussion, our focus has been entirely tethered to physical artifacts. We have discussed heavy, watermarked paper bearing wet ink signatures from county clerks. We have discussed plastic cards issued by motor vehicle departments and paper passports rendered invalid by a physical hole punch.
It is an incredibly analog architecture for a digital world. Our legal existence relies entirely on specialized paper and plastic.
Exactly. Our entire concept of who we are in the eyes of the global state apparatus is precariously tied to items that can be lost in the mail, destroyed in a flood, or forged by a sophisticated actor. The provocative consideration for the future is simply this: how much longer can this analog, paper-based infrastructure survive?
That's a great question.
We are rapidly approaching an era dominated by digital identities, biometric passports, and the potential integration of blockchain technology for immutable public registries.
That would fundamentally rewrite the rules of everything we just talked about.
Consider the implications. Will we soon reach a free paradigm where a marriage is not recorded on paper, but instantly executed via a cryptographic smart contract?
Wow.
A contract that, upon digital signature, simultaneously and automatically pushes an identity update to your federal tax records, your provincial health registries, your international banking institutions, and your aviation security profiles in a fraction of a second.
That sounds amazing, honestly.
It does. If the physical friction is eliminated, the bureaucratic nightmares of mismatched flight tickets and delayed ACH transfers vanish.
Yeah.
But in embracing a system of instantaneous, globally connected digital identity, what new unseen vulnerabilities, perhaps massive cascading cyber vulnerabilities, will we be introducing into the very core of human identity?
Going from a crumpled deli ticket in a DMV waiting room to an instantaneous global blockchain smart contract feels like science fiction, but it also feels structurally inevitable.
It's definitely coming.
The friction has to be solved eventually, but until that digital utopia arrives, we are stuck with the paper, the stamps, and the dominoes. You wake up after the most romantic day of your life, the magic settles, and you realize that proving who you are to the world is incredibly complicated work. But hopefully, after today, you have the architectural blueprint you need to rebuild your identity without letting the system crash.